The Alps, majestic, silent, and deadly. On a cold January morning in 1966, the calm was shattered by a thunderous explosion echoing through the Mont Blanc mountain range. Locals looked up to see fire, debris, and falling wreckage. High above them, Air India Flight 171, Kanchenjunga had vanished into the mountain, carrying 117 souls to their death. But what really happened that morning? Why did a perfectly healthy Boeing 707 crash straight into Europe's tallest mountain? And what investigators found in the wreckage would leave the world stunned? Number 1. The flight that never arrived. On January the 24th, 1966, Air India Flight 171, Kanchenjunga began its scheduled journey from Bombay to London. The Boeing 707-437 represented the pride of India's growing aviation network. Among the travelers were scientists, diplomats, students, and business leaders. One of the most notable passengers was Dr. Homi Jehangir Bhabha, India's leading nuclear scientist. Dr. Bhabha was traveling to Vienna for an International Atomic Energy Agency meeting. The flight operated smoothly through its scheduled stops in Delhi and Beirut before heading toward Geneva, the next leg of the route. Weather reports were favorable, and the crew, Captain J.T. D'Souza, First Officer D.D.L. D'Souza, and Flight Engineer Monsieur Kapoor were all highly experienced. At 7:02 a.m., the flight made routine contact with Geneva Air Traffic Control while descending near the Mont Blanc region. After that, message, communication, and was lost, and the aircraft did not reach its destination. Number 2. The crash. Moments later, radar contact vanished. Swiss controllers tried repeatedly to reach the flight. There was no reply. At around 8 a.m., witnesses in the small alpine village of Saint Gervais reported seeing a flash of light high above Mont Blanc. A massive explosion followed, and moments later, fragments of metal and snow rained down from the sky. The sound echoed across the valley, a deep rolling thunder that lasted several seconds. Rescue teams began climbing the mountain. It wasn't until hours later that they found the horrifying truth. Scattered across the slopes at 15,000 feet were the twisted remains of the Boeing 707, shattered, burned, and half buried in the snow. There were no survivors. The mountain had claimed them all. The crash site was almost identical to another tragedy, Air India Flight 245, also named Kanchenjunga, which had crashed into the same mountain 16 years earlier in 1950. Two Air India aircraft, two similar names, both lost to the same peak, Mont Blanc. Number 3. The investigation begins. Investigators from France, Switzerland, and India launched a full-scale inquiry. The early evidence was confusing. Weather was clear, the aircraft was mechanically sound, and the crew was experienced. So how did a modern jetliner fly straight into a mountain? The flight recorders, or black boxes, were primitive by today's standards. Yet they revealed one clue. The aircraft had been flying at 19,000 feet, as instructed. The problem was, Mont Blanc's summit is 15,777 feet high. Flight 171 should have easily cleared it, but in the Alps, easily is deceptive. A single navigational error could be fatal. At the time, navigation relied on radio, beacons, and pilot calculations, not GPS. Investigators determined that the crew believed they were already past the mountain range when, in fact, they were still directly above it. A simple timing error, possibly caused by strong headwinds, placed the aircraft several miles behind its expected position. Captain Souza began descending, assuming they were clear of terrain, but Mont Blanc stood directly in their path. In seconds, the jet slammed into the mountain at nearly 450 miles per hour. The impact tore the aircraft apart instantly. Number 4. The human cost of when rescuers reached the crash site. What they saw was devastating. Wreckage was scattered across hundreds of meters. The snow was stained with jet fuel and metal fragments. The force of impact had vaporized much of the plane. Nothing was recognizable. But among the twisted debris, searchers found personal items, a diplomat's briefcase, a child's toy, fragments of letters written in Hindi and English. And then, a few hours later, they made a shocking discovery. A portion of Dr. Homi Bhabha's passport. India's most brilliant scientist was gone. For India, it was a national tragedy. The loss of 117 citizens was devastating, but the death of Bhabha hit even harder. He had been the driving force behind India's nuclear ambitions, and his sudden death in an accident that seemed avoidable fueled countless conspiracy theories. Number 5. Conspiracy or catastrophe. In the days that followed, speculation grew rapidly. Some observers believed the tragedy was the result of a simple navigational error. Others, however, questioned whether something more complex had occurred. Dr. Bhabha's prominence in the global nuclear community drew international attention during the Cold War, when India's scientific progress was closely watched by major powers. Over time, a number of theories emerged suggesting there might have been undisclosed factors behind the loss of Flight 171. The wreckage was scattered across steep, remote mountain terrain, making recovery and investigation extremely difficult. The official French inquiry concluded that the aircraft had flown into terrain after a navigational mistake by the crew. Yet, years later, some researchers continued to discuss unresolved details about the event. While no verified evidence has ever supported claims of deliberate action, the mystery surrounding the Kanchenjunga crash remains a topic of debate among historians and aviation experts. Number 6. The mountain keeps its secrets. Mont Blanc became a graveyard. Over the years, the glacier slowly moved, carrying pieces of Flight 171 down the mountain, and as it did, it began to give up its secrets. In 1986, mountaineers discovered a briefcase buried deep in the ice, still sealed. Inside were diplomatic documents from the Indian government. In 2012, more wreckage surfaced again, including a bag containing jewelry and newspapers from the 1960s. Then, in 2013, a local climber made an astonishing find, a metal box containing Indian diplomatic mail, still intact after almost 50 years. The crash site, frozen for decades, had become a time capsule. A reminder of lives and history trapped in ice. Number 7. The pilot's final moments. Reconstructing the final minutes of Air India 171, investigators believed the crew was calm and confident. They had been descending under clear skies, expecting to spot Geneva below. But at 19,000 feet, surrounded by snow and cloud reflections, visibility was treacherous. They likely saw nothing but white horizon and sunlight, a deadly illusion known as whiteout conditions. The altimeter showed the right altitude, but the navigation chart, based on estimates, placed them further along than they really were. When the captain began descending, the first officer might have noticed the subradar altimeter rising rapidly, a sign of approaching terrain, but by then it was too late. The mountain appeared in front of them for just seconds before impact. There was no time to react, no time to climb. The engines roared, and then nothing. Number 8. Legacy and lessons. Air India 171 became a painful lesson in aviation safety. It was classified as a controlled flight into terrain CFIT, an accident where a functioning aircraft is unintentionally flown into the ground. CFIT accidents were common in the 1950s and 60s, but each tragedy pushed aviation closer to the modern safety systems we rely on today. In the decades that followed, technology transformed air travel. Ground proximity warning systems were developed to alert pilots if they approached terrain. Later, terrain awareness and warning systems TAWs added. Computer-generated maps and GPS data, virtually eliminating CFIT incidents in commercial aviation. The mountain that had claimed 2 Air India flights indirectly saved countless others by changing aviation safety forever. Number 9. The conspiracy lives on. Despite the investigation's official findings, the story of Air India 171 refuses to fade. In India, some continue to believe the crash was no accident. The timing, just months after India's nuclear breakthrough, seemed too coincidental. Some even linked it to foreign intelligence interference. Over the years, various journalists and researchers have revisited the case, but no conclusive evidence of sabotage has ever surfaced. Still, the theory persists because the truth died with the 117 people aboard. Number 10. Mont Blanc. Haunting reminder. Even today, the glacier continues to reveal fragments of Flight 171. Every few years, mountaineers find new debris, small metal parts, papers, and human remains. It's as if the mountain is slowly returning what it took. Locals call Mont Blanc the silent witness. For decades, it has guarded the secrets of both Air India crashes, Flight 245 and Flight 171, separated by time, bound by tragedy, the echo that never fades. As the sun sets over Mont Blanc, the story of Air India 171 remains, frozen in time, a moment when human error, fate, and history collided. For the families of those who died, answers never fully came. For India, the loss of Bhabha changed the course of science, and for aviation, it marked another painful chapter in the struggle between technology and nature. 59 years later, the mountain still holds echoes of that morning, fragments of an airplane, whispers of voices, and the eternal question, what really happened to Air India 171? Conclusion. In aviation, every tragedy leaves behind two things, wreckage and wisdom. Flight 171 left both, but somewhere in the ice of Mont Blanc, it also left behind a truth the world may never fully know. Even today, decades later, the mountain continues to reveal fragments of that doomed flight, a torn piece of fuselage, a scrap of luggage, or a letter that never reached its destination. Each discovery serves as a haunting reminder of that cold morning when the aircraft disappeared into the heart of the Alps. For investigators, the cause of the crash has always remained elusive. Mechanical failure, sudden decompression, or even a mid-air explosion all were considered, but none could be proven with certainty. What is known is that the tragedy changed aviation forever. It forced new safety standards, better flight monitoring, and stricter high-altitude navigation protocols. But beyond the lessons and reforms, there are families who still look toward Mont Blanc with questions that will never be answered. Flight 171's story is one of mystery, loss, and resilience. The mountain may keep its secrets, but the world will never forget the lives it claimed and the warnings it left behind in silence.